In our hands, in our cars, even in our homes, there's this one element that's quietly powering our entire modern world. But behind this seemingly simple blue-gray metal lies a really complex story, one of incredible technological ambition, fierce economic warfare, and a profound human cost. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the story of cobalt and the uncomfortable truth that connects our clean, green future to a crisis happening right now.
I mean, the vision itself is fantastic, right? We're all in this global race towards electrification. You see it everywhere. Sleek electric cars gliding silently down the street, these massive battery farms popping up to stabilize our power grids. It really feels like we're on the cusp of a greener, more sustainable planet.
But what is the real price of all this progress? Because hidden deep, deep within the supply chain for these revolutionary batteries is a reality that is anything but clean. And as this image shows so powerfully, the very foundation of our green future is in many ways built on a much, much darker truth. To really understand this, we've got to talk about cobalt. It is the single element at the very heart of this entire story, the invisible thread that links the device in your pocket to a crisis unfolding halfway around the world. Okay, so why is this one element so important? Well, in the most popular high-performance batteries, you'll hear them called NCM batteries. Cobalt is basically the unsung hero. Picture the battery's cathode, that's the part that stores the energy, as a really delicate, complex honeycomb structure. Cobalt is the special ingredient that reinforces that structure, holding it all together under the intense stress of charging and discharging over and over again. Without it, the whole thing would just crumble. With it, the battery lasts longer and can pack way more power into the same small space. That's what we call higher energy density. It is literally the reason our phones can last all day and our EVs can drive for hundreds of miles. And its strength isn't just for batteries. This stuff is critical in superalloys for jet engines too. It's tough. And this chart right here, it perfectly illustrates where all that cobalt is actually going. Just look at that. A massive 43% of all cobalt demand now comes from the electric vehicle sector alone. That is the single biggest engine driving this entire market. After that, you've got portable electronics, your phone, your laptop, and then those superalloys we talked about. But make no mistake, the EV boom is the dominant force shaping everything we're about to discuss.
All of this immense global demand funnels our attention down to one single point on the map. Because to find the source of nearly all of this cobalt, we have to go to one country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
And this number is just staggering. Over 70%. Let that sink in. Over 70% of the entire world's supply of cobalt comes from the DRC. This isn't just a simple majority, it's a near monopoly. And that kind of concentration of such a critical resource in one place creates enormous geopolitical and, of course, ethical problems for the rest of the world. Now, when we picture mining, we probably think of massive machines, huge industrial sites. But a huge portion of the cobalt coming out of the DRC is from what's called artisanal and small-scale mining, or ASM. For hundreds of thousands of people, this is the reality. We're talking about digging by hand, with basic shovels and picks, often in incredibly dangerous, completely unregulated tunnels with little or no safety equipment whatsoever. The author and researcher Siddharth Kara puts it about as starkly as you can with this quote. His argument is that the human rights crisis in these mines isn't some accident or a bug in the system. No, he says it's a feature that allows the world to get access to cheap cobalt. It's a direct, deeply uncomfortable line between the products we all use every single day and the immense suffering of the people digging these materials out of the ground. Now, you'd probably think that with EV demand soaring through the roof, the price of cobalt would be skyrocketing and that the miners would be benefiting. But this is where the story takes a really sharp, counterintuitive turn. We have to look at the market forces because, believe it or not, the cobalt world is actually drowning in a massive oversupply. And it all comes down to this number, plus 36 kilotons. What that means is that in 2024, the world produced 36,000 metric tons more cobalt than it actually consumed. To give you a sense of that scale, that's the weight of about 20,000 electric cars, just extra. And what's really alarming is that this surplus is growing. The year before it was 25,000 tons. The imbalance is getting worse, not better. You see, this isn't just a temporary blip. This is what economists call a structural oversupply. It means the fundamental mechanics of the market itself are broken. Production is just so incredibly high year after year that it completely swamps demand.
And when you have way more of something than people want to buy, the basic law of supply and demand is absolutely ruthless. Prices collapse. And here is the brutal result. Just look at these price drops in a single year. Cobalt hydroxide, that's the raw stuff from the mines, it fell 15%. Cobalt metal, used in alloys, plummeted 22%. And cobalt sulfate, the chemical that actually goes into the batteries, dropped 20%. By the end of the year, prices were at historic lows. This is just catastrophic for everyone involved, but especially for those artisanal miners at the very bottom who have absolutely zero leverage. So you have to ask, what on earth caused this market to just collapse? Well, the answer seems to point directly to the strategic actions of one single dominant company, CMOC. In 2024, they deliberately produced 114,000 tons of cobalt. Now get this, that's a staggering 31% above their own stated capacity. This one act just flooded the market, and you can see the result. Their global market share leaped from 24% all the way to 41% in just 1 year. But why would they do this? Well, it wasn't really about cobalt. It was a strategic copper play. See, cobalt is mined as a byproduct of copper, and with copper prices high, CMOC wanted to maximize copper production at all costs. The resulting cobalt glut, that was just collateral damage they were willing to inflict on the market to secure their dominance and cash in on copper. And just to add another layer of complexity, that price collapse we saw is measured using these global shipping terms, like CIF and Ex-Works. These terms basically decide who is responsible for the cost and risk as the material travels from a mine in Africa to a battery factory in Asia. It just shows how the financial risks in this system are as volatile as the market itself. So this extreme volatility, the ethical crisis combined with a total price collapse, is forcing the entire industry to seriously rethink its future. No company wants this much risk baked into their supply chain. So the race is on, a race for alternatives and for any kind of stability. And that leads us right into the great battery chemistry battle. On one side, you have the reigning champs, the NCM and NCA batteries. They're the ones that use cobalt to deliver that amazing energy density we all want. But they're expensive and they're tied to this deeply problematic supply chain. On the other side, you've got the challenger, LFP, or lithium iron phosphate batteries. Their huge selling point? Zero cobalt. They're cheaper, more stable, but historically, they just couldn't pack the same punch in terms of energy density. The key word there is historically. That is changing, and it's changing fast.
And the market? Well, the market is already voting with its wallets. Chinese battery and EV makers, who are the biggest players in the world by a long shot, are aggressively shifting to these cheaper, cobalt-free LFP batteries. This trend is a massive threat to the long-term demand for cobalt. The very industry that created the cobalt boom is now actively trying to engineer it out of existence. And beyond just new chemistry, big corporations are turning to technology to try and manage this chaos. As this quote highlights, artificial intelligence is now being developed to predict supply chain disruptions before they happen. This isn't just about figuring out shipping times, it's a direct response to the kind of market manipulation and the huge ethical risks that make cobalt such a dangerous and volatile investment. Okay, so let's bring all this together. Let's connect these huge global trends back to the big picture and ask, what does all this mean for us and for the clean energy future that we're all trying to build? This timeline really sums up what we can call the cobalt paradox. Right now, EV demand is high, which should mean high demand for cobalt. But a deliberate oversupply has crashed prices, hurting the most vulnerable people in the whole chain. So, in response, companies are running away from cobalt towards LFP batteries. And here's the final insane twist. Forecasters are now predicting that by 2027, this whole thing will flip on its head. The market will enter a period of structural deficits, where demand once again outstrips supply, especially from ethical sources. The whiplash is really just beginning. And that leaves us with this one final crucial question. The transition to clean energy, it's not just a technological challenge, it's an ethical one. The materials that we use to build our future have to come from somewhere, and they're mined by someone. So as we build this new world, we have to ask ourselves, what is the price we are willing to pay, and who is the one paying it?
So while markets rise and fall, systems like this quietly move billions behind the scenes, hidden from the public, hidden from scrutiny, and sometimes hidden from the law itself. Because in global finance, the most powerful forces are rarely the most visible. And this is just one of the systems used by the unseen elite.